Well, I came to New York 12 years ago last month with a pair of navy pumps, a pair of black pumps, and one pair of black boots. That was my corporate attire. That's all I had. That's all I needed. My first New York purchase of shoes was a pair of red, shiny, patent leather high heels, peep toe with a bow. Yeah. I wear them now once a year. Why is this? Because I have arthritis in my big right toe. That arthritis will be scraped away sometime this summer, and there will be a pin put in it, like literally stick a pin in it to make it healthy and whole. But in the meantime, I can't be stomping around New York in those high heel shoes. I take 2 Advil twice every day to stop the pain in my shoulders that results from the pain in my back, that results from my hips being out of line, because my knees are kind of weak because my right toe hurts. Holla. Well, hello. Somebody say, ow. I mean, really. And my doctor tells me the right toe, whoever would have thunk it, my right toe is one of the most important parts of my body. And that's why I hurt, and that's why I have to fix it. Now, I don't have a foot fetish. I don't think my feet, I just want to be clear, I don't think my feet are particularly cute, but I have never paid more attention to my toes since my pain started kicking my butt. Though they are often covered in socks or stockings, though they are sweaty and need special bathing to continue personal relations, if you know what I mean, feet are very important. Somebody say amen. So Paul's letter to these squabbling, fussing, fighting people at the church in Corinth uses body parts to talk about body politics. The church was having growing pains. They were wrestling with spiritual things. They were wondering about the varieties of gifts that they had in the midst of them. Some of them were teachers, and some of them were preachers. Some of them were singers, and some of them had, careers on Broadway. And others of the singers made their money by singing on cruise ships and in regional theaters. Somebody say amen. There were people who could pray. There were people who could teach. There were people who spoke in unknown languages. And you know how people can get. The people of God can get the swole head, holla. I'm having such a good time in my life. And then other people of God can get the I'm not as good as she as blues. Later in the correspondence, Paul will tell the whole community that the gift they needed to strive for, they wanted to lean into, was love, that love is the greatest gift of all. But in this particular moment, he is saying to the ones with the big head and the swole up self, the smallest part of the body, and Cheryl read it with such eloquence, you might miss it, the smallest part of the body, the unseen part of the body, the stankiest part of the body, yeah, that's the part that's the most important, is what Paul said. Yes, that's what he said. And he says that's the most important part is just as important as the mouth that speaks, the heart that feels. That part of the body is just as important, if not more important than other parts. He's saying to the community that each part of the body is mission critical. Each part of the body is essential, that you can't function if you don't have all parts of the body functioning. Now, I just want to be really careful here. Do you understand what I'm talking about? When that's not functioning, how do you feel? How? Okay, you got me. Each part of the body has a gift. Each one is gifted. And Paul was using a metaphor that was common for his day. The church is a body. The synagogue is a body. The mosque is a body. The society is a body. And sometimes when people were using that metaphor, they were saying that to say, you peon part of the body, you stay in your place. You stay right where you are because it's designed that way. But Paul was really trying to flip that around and was arguing for the need for diversity and the need for interdependence among all of the body parts. He wrote to urge those who felt superior, those who had privilege, to challenge them to think about themselves as not able to be themselves without everyone else in the picture. He wrote to equalize, make plain, make straight the equation. The haves were bound to the have-nots. The educated bound to the uneducated. The good bound to the not so good. No gift, no ability, no resource, no ancestry. Nothing set one member above another. And nothing made any member less than. Because each part of the body is essential to the wholeness and the functioning of the body, and the living out of that truth then requires this. It is exemplified when the whole body values what seems to be the least powerful body part, the part of the body that others would deride and devalue.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, may God's peace, mercy, and blessings be with you today. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who have faith. God speaks to us in the Quran. And when a verse opens with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith, O you who believe, it is a call. God isn't asking us if we believe. Because if God asks you, do you believe? That's like when your significant other asks you, do you love me? The answer is always yes. 99% of the time. And so that's not the question. God doesn't ask you the question. When a verse opens with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, it's a show don't tell moment where God asks us to prove our belief and our love, to see the promised land and not enter, to take our firstborn son to the top of a mountain and see what happens next. I'm trying to do this BuzzFeed style. And so this verse begins, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who believe, O you who have faith, be maintainers of justice and witnesses for the sake of God, even if it should be against yourselves or your parents or your near relatives, and whether it is against someone rich or against someone poor, for God has the greater right over them. And do not follow your desires in case you're unfair, or if you lie, or if you throw out testimony, because God is aware of everything. And so this verse, the show don't tell moment of this verse, is a call for us to stand for justice. And that call is so important that we have to testify against whom? Against ourselves, against our nearest kin, against our friends, against the most powerful, because God is the most powerful. And God has commanded justice, and it is incumbent on us to have our first loyalty to the originator of all that exists. There is no power without the Most High. And so today, I stand before you as a witness for justice. I witness that there is no God but God. I witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. I witness that Ali is a friend of God and a commander of the faithful. And because I witness all of this, I witness that to bring about justice in this country is to recognize that Black lives matter. I can stand against the injustice of Islamophobia. It makes me angry. It makes me angry. But Imam Ali, the successor to Prophet Muhammad's religious authority, says that to let your anger control you makes you an animal. But to not be angry in the face of injustice means you have no humanity. So be angry and be smart. Muslims are the victims of discrimination now that other faith groups have faced in the past. The same sort of discrimination that immigrant groups have faced in the past in this country. And that is not an excuse. That should be a shock to our system, that says no matter where we are in this country, no matter when we are in this country, there is always hate against the other. And in that argument that Muslims face the same discrimination that other people face, we forget that the first people we hate are black people. Enslaved, it is literally on the backs of black people that this country is built, and yet at every moment as a nation, we say that black people are not of our national body, that black lives are not the same as white lives. If we say as a country that the people who are on this land first are not part of the nation, if we say that the people who worked to make this country are not part of this nation, is it any wonder that we find it so easy to say that other people are not part of this nation? And at every moment, we see a new way that say black lives don't matter. Whether it's in housing or the economy or policing, we say it. We say it through show, don't tell. So just because we don't use the language doesn't mean racism is dead. And although Amadou Diallo was a Muslim when he was shot 41 times by the police, it wasn't because he was Muslim. It was because he was a black man. He was shot 41 times. Imam Ali teaches us that justice has 4 foundations: comprehension, knowledge, wisdom, and restraint. And his great-grandson, Imam Ja'far, reminds us that we have 4 obligations as people of faith: an obligation to God, an obligation to ourselves, an obligation to each other, and an obligation to creation. And so we need to know and understand our divine commitments to one another to get justice. Because if I don't see me in you and you in me, I'm standing alone. And we know where that goes. And so once we get that commitment, then I realize I can try to fix the pain in my butt, that is Islamophobia. But I miss the fact that it starts from the boot on my neck, that is racism, and that I can't breathe. And so I stand here, witnessing that I have faith, and witnessing that we are one body, and that to get rid of Islamophobia, I must fight to recognize that Black lives matter. Thank you.
So, what's happened in our society is simple and tragic. Don't go. We don't value all the parts of the body. Some narrative was created by some white historian some time ago that said white, heterosexual, Christian, and male was on top, and everybody else had to find a place on the bottom. Those amazing First Nations people who had their land taken by some of the Dutch people, I must say, I'm so embarrassed about it, but had their language taken, had their land stolen, marched across the country, put on reservations, their bodies weren't valued. African bodies weren't valued, sadly, not even by some of their own people. Let's talk about the slave trade. Let's do it another time. But imagine black bodies not valued, African values not valued. I've been to the slave castles in Ghana. Those 219 girls are still missing in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. Who's talking about that? Mm-hmm. Are the lives of Muslims valued? No. Are the lives of Jews valued? No. Are the lives of Sikhs valued? No. Does the world value the so-called global South, where the poverty is, we can't even describe the abject poverty in which those people live, where the children go to garbage heaps to find food to put in their mouths? Women's lives, are they valued? In a world where a woman can be tortured because of the crimes of her brothers and her fathers, women's lives don't matter. In the face of the narrative that guides our culture, Hussein, it's no wonder that even some of us don't even find the kind of courage to value our own lives. When the evidence that comes flowing at you is, you don't matter, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to feel it. Hussein reminded me that the great 13th century Persian poet wrote, I'm going to ask you to tell them.
The children of Adam are limbs of each other, and having been created out of one essence, when the calamity afflicts one limb, the other limbs cannot remain at rest. If you have no sympathy for the trouble of others, you're not worthy to be called human.
So though it tires us, and forgive me for saying it plain, we have to give a damn about each other. We have to value brains. Amen. Damn is in the Bible, so don't be afraid, okay? There is no lightning coming. You'll protect me, right?
Just not on me, though. You just, yeah.
Are you distancing yourself?
Just in case.
We have to love each other enough to give a damn about each other. The head has to value the toe. The brains have to value the heart. Because we are one human family and we actually will not survive without each other. Amen. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we're all tied together in a single garment of destiny and an inescapable network of mutuality. I can never be what I ought to be unless you are allowed to be what you ought to be. I do not think that the human family will survive unless this sinks deeply in, unless we realize that it's in our self-interest to care about what happens to one another. Family, I'm so proud of you. I cannot tell you enough. The first sermon I preached here was on King Day 12 years ago, and I told you were super bad. And you're like awesome, awesome, awesome. And to whom much is given. You know what I'm saying? Much is required. So I'm asking you to remember the politics of our body, to care enough, to engage, to fight for the weak, to put those on the margins in the center, to weep with the vulnerable, to stand for those who can't fight for themselves, to look at Mexican immigrants and Syrian refugees and queer homeless teens and Muslims and Jews and Nigerians, especially kidnapped girls, and First Nation poor older people, and yes, Black lives, through the lens that their lives are inextricably connected to ours. And because they are, I have just three things for you to think about doing. First of all, every week I'm saying, make a friend, make a friend. Today is the Make a Friend Day. Those of our members who went away to the retreat picked a prayer partner. I want you today, on the way into the social hall, on the way into the concert, pick the person that's not like you that you're going to connect with between now and Easter. That's your assignment. Are you up for it? Somebody wants to know your story and has holy curiosity about you, and I want you to have it about them. Can you do that? I don't believe you. Can you do that? Okay. 2, and this is an idea I have to just attribute to my beautiful husband, John. We've both been reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me. Yeah, right? He writes this amazing letter to his son. Absolutely. And John is saying, what if we all wrote a letter? What if you wrote a letter to a child in your life? A child in your life, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, your kids. I'm dreaming about this world for you. Write the letter and invite them to be the people who help deliver on the love promise. Can you do that? And finally, Dr. King said 11 o'clock was the most segregated hour in America. Not on our watch. Not on our watch. But somebody out there has never been to a place like this. So next Sunday and the Sunday after, bring somebody who doesn't look like you, who would be just mesmerized, happy and thrilled to be in a place like this, where we know we are the body and all of the parts are important and every gift is needed to heal the world. And since that's true, oh, one day when the glory comes, It will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day when the war is done, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory. Glory.